Welcome to the Financial Safety Net. I'm Kristen Felder with Collision Hub. This position paper is for independent shop owners who are trying to make sense of the changing market, rising overhead, shrinking repairable claim volume, insurer pressure, skilled labor challenges, and the growing question of whether the business model that worked before will still work now. I'm reading this paper in sections because I think each part deserves its own conversation. This first section is the warning. It is the part of the paper that comes from my own life, my own family, and what I have watched happen inside this industry. The full paper is available through the link in the description. Let's begin. Why independent collision shop owners need the craft back in the business. When the cash slows, the only shops with options are the ones where ownership still understands and can perform the work that creates the revenue. This is the foundation of this paper. When I was growing up in our family body shop, I learned something about this business that no consultant, franchise system, DRP scorecard, or a financial report can ever erase. When the times got hard, my dad did not have the option of simply managing his way through it. In the 80s, when work slowed and money got tight, he laid people off. Then he walked back into the shop and did the work himself. Now, my brother and I helped where we could. Cars still had to be repaired, prep still had to be done, paint still had to be sprayed. Someone still had to touch the car. Now, that's not romantic. It was survival. And I believe it is the part of this business too many shop owners have been encouraged to forget. Recently I sat down with 3 collision shops that were closing. All 3 were DRP dependent. 2 of them were franchises. These were not shops without support. They had consultants looking at their books. They had systems. They had programs. They had people telling them how to be a good shop. And none of it saved them. The reason was not that they were bad people. And it was not that they didn't work hard. It wasn't even that they had failed to listen to the advice that were given. The reason every one of them failed came down to one fact. No one in the ownership could perform the work. Not the body repair, not the paint, not the prep. So when cash got tight, they were trapped 3 ways at once. They could not afford to keep the skilled staff they had. They could not afford to replace the skilled staff. And they could not step onto the floor and do the work themselves. The business ran only as long as the money flowed. The day it slowed, there was nothing underneath it. That is the warning this paper is built around. Collision repair will always be a human labor dependent business. Now, software can write estimates, insurers can automate claims, rules engines can decide what people want to pay, but there is no software that can remove the bumper, weld the panel, block the primer, blend the cover, or deliver the car. Someone has to touch it. The question is whether that someone is inside the ownership of the business or whether the entire shop depends on employees the owner cannot afford to lose, cannot afford to replace, and cannot personally back up when the market takes a turn. Now, to understand how we got here, we have to look at how the car changed. And it changed this business once before. Before the unibody became the dominant structure in the American market, collision repair was largely an industry of small independent shops. These were not mega shops. They were not multi-location operators. In many cases, they were just a family business. A few people, a modest building, a local reputation, and enough work that supported their household. They did not need to own everything. They did not need a massive frame machine. They didn't need a full menu of specialty equipment. Most repairs were body and paint that a skilled generalist could handle. When the vehicle was hit hard enough to need major structural pulling, many small shops sent that work out to a frame shop. That made sense. The work was occasional enough, the equipment was expensive enough, and the space was limited enough that outsourcing the worst structural hits was simply part of the business model. Then the vehicle changed. The downsized front-wheel drive unibody arrived in the U.S. market at mass volume. For many people in the trade, the 1980 Chevrolet Citation or GM's X-Body platform became the marker for that change. The frame was no longer a separate structure underneath the car. The sheet metal, inner structure, aprons, towers, rails, and floor pans became part of the load-bearing structure of the vehicle itself. And that changed everything. Structural repair was no longer something that only happened on the occasional hard hit car, although sometimes we still think that way. On a unibody vehicle, the structure was everywhere. Damage that once might have stayed isolated to some bolt on panels could now travel through the body. Pulling the car the old way could distort the passenger compartment completely. Heating metal the old way could change not only the strength, but the entire structure of the material. Suspension mounting points, aprons, and towers had to be measured with far more precision. The car had outrun the old repair model, and the industry had to respond. In 1979, insurers, automakers, tool manufacturers, and shop operators came together to create iCar because the trade needed a way to train technicians for this new structure. The response was not just about teaching people how to pull a different kind of car. It was about helping an entire industry survive a vehicle change that had made the old skill set incomplete. But the unibody did not only change the repair process, it changed the business model. As structural measurement and pulling became more common, the frame machine moved inside the collision shop. That was a turning point. Once a repair process that had traditionally been sublet became an expected in house operation, the wall between the collision shop and the specialty provider began to weaken. The frame machine was just the first crack in the dam. After that, insurers and DRP programs pushed more work through the same opening. If a structural repair could be brought inside, why not mechanical? Why not suspension? Why not alignments? Why not glass? Why not AC, diagnostics, and other operations that had once been sent to specialists? From the insurer's perspective, the logic was simple. Sublet created a delay. Sublet added invoices. Sublet reduced control. And sublet made severity harder to manage. A shop that could keep a vehicle under one roof promised faster cycle time, fewer outside vendors, more predictable cost, and a cleaner claims process. For the shop, that changed the expectations again. The collision repairer was no longer just expected to repair and refinish damaged panels. The shop was increasingly expected to operate as a full service repair facility with body, paint, structural, mechanical, alignment, diagnostic, glass, and administrative capacity all under the same roof. That model made sense when the insurer volume was strong enough to feed it, but it also changed the financial structure of an independent shop. Every service brought inside required more space, more equipment, more training, more payroll, more management, and more cars every month just to support all of that new overhead. The small family shop that once survived on skill, reputation, and selective sublet work was pushed toward a larger, more capital heavy model. More equipment, more square footage, more training, more payroll, more administrative burden, and more cars needed every month just to keep that machine fed. That is when collision repair slowly started becoming less of a family trade and more of a business operation. Shops got bigger. Owners moved further away from the floor. The industry began to treat it as progress when the owner became a manager instead of a repairer. More white collar, more production focused, more dependent on employees to perform the physical work that created the revenue. Somewhere in that transition, those calloused hands that had built many of these businesses became something owners were encouraged to outgrow. That was not entirely wrong for the time. The DRP era rewarded scale, speed, equipment, and one roof production. If the work was plentiful and the insurer volume kept coming, the model could work. The shop carried payroll, finance the equipment, train the staff, and feed the building. But that was the condition. The volume had to keep coming. Now the car is changing again. Today's vehicle is not just a body and paint problem. It is a structural, electronic, mechanical scanning, calibration, programming materials, liability, and documentation problem. The equipment required is expensive and constantly changing. The training burden is constant. The staff needed to truly do everything correctly under one roof is difficult, if possible, to find, then difficult to keep, and very expensive to replace. At the same time, the volume that once supported the model, well, it's just not returning. Repairable claims are shrinking, total losses are rising, deductibles are pushing smaller repairs out of the claim system entirely. Insurers are standardizing payments and cutting what they're willing to reimburse. The cost of being a full service, everything under one roof collision business keeps going up, while the work needed to support it keeps getting thinner. That's why this moment matters. The unibody era taught shops to bring more work inside because the volume, economics, and insurer incentives supported that model. Today's vehicle may be teaching the opposite lesson. Keep the core craft deep, keep the ownership close to the work, and stop carrying every specialty under one roof when the cash flow needed to support it is disappearing. The one roof shop was not a mistake. It was the correct answer to the vehicle, insurer, and DRP environment of its time. But the danger is treating yesterday's correct answer as a permanent rule. The car changed the industry once, and it's doing it again. Now, that is where we'll stop for part one. Part two, we'll get into the market response, the market reset, shrinking repairable claims, rising total losses, rising costs, labor pressures, and just why the math has stopped working for so many independent shops. Now, you can download the full paper using the link in the description. And if this raises any questions about your own shop, your overhead, your people, your estimating, your customer communication, or your business model, take a look at our C20 groups from Collision Hub. The goal is not just to understand what's changing. The goal is to build a shop with options. When the work slows, the skill becomes your safety net. I'll see you in the next episode.